Good evening to you.
These guys are all big influences on me and certainly house music.
No, that does not sound like
walk around with that collar popped up.
Yeah.
Hey, do this.
Yeah.
You go over there.
So let's go on that. I want to talk a little bit about each of your illustrious careers, because you guys have done a lot. All three of you have done amazing, have had amazing contributions to what we call house music. This is the Vintage House Show. And so part of what that is about is celebration and preservation. This is Lauren's framing, but the celebration and preservation of Chicago house legends and Chicago house music. And I think
Welcome to the Vintage House Show. Welcoming our new host of the Vintage House Show, Mr. Jesse Saunders. Take it away, Jesse.
Oh my God. I can't believe I'm taking over the Vintage House Show. How many times have I watched you guys do your thing and do it well? I must add.
And you can never get to the studio when I'm in there. So this is the closest that we have.
Yeah, well, thank God for Zoom, man. We can do a virtual thing. So I'm taking over Vintage House tonight to interview the interviewers. Because what did they do? They had some amazing featured stories in the book, my book, and their book, because they're part of it, in their own words. Tomorrow it will actually be released, finally, after 3 weeks of pre-sale, but some people actually got their paperbacks. But what I'd like to do tonight is have the illustrious Kevin McFall and the beautiful, most beautiful, and person I love so much, Larry Branch, talk about their stories tonight. So, to kick it off, what I would like to ask is a general question. Let's see, who am I going to... Actually, I won't both of you answer, but we're gonna have ladies go first, right?
Okay.
So my question to you, Lori, is what were you doing before you became house?
Oh,
what was your life
wow.
like?
What? That's a really good question. Before I became house, I was, I don't even know how to answer that, Jesse. I will answer it in a couple of ways. I was a high schooler, a typical, blend into the lockers kind of girl, hanging out with my friends, cutting classes, and trying to understand this new medium called, disco, dance, punk, etc. That's what I was doing at Bloom High School. Except I did meet a nice guy named Jesse Saunders through my friend April around that time too.
Ooh, April who?
Well, Davis, remember April? You know her better than I do.
I know who it was, but the viewers don't know who it was. April was a really nice girl. We used to hang out at her house.
Friend.
Oh yeah, I love April. She just disappeared. I haven't seen her in so many years, unfortunately. Yeah. Kevin, same question to you, my brother.
What
were you doing before you became house?
Before I became house, I too was a high schooler. St. Francis de Sales High School, the Pioneers, and Southeast Side is where I hung out most of the time. I was a necessarily a shy high school guy, but I wasn't sort of with the in crowd just yet. And I was playing soccer, played on the junior varsity soccer team, and really went to St. Francis because I wanted to be at a co-ed Catholic high school. And WLS, WVON, and WJPC were the radio stations I listened to.
And what were they playing? What kind of formats?
R&B, funk, and rock and roll.
What was your favorite?
Well, this is the beauty of it. I have always just loved music. And so the genres weren't as critical or as important to me at that time. I just, love what those stations were playing, from the Bay City Rollers to Ohio Players.
Ohio, I was listening to that too.
Did you hear
Funk.
the one about
That's what we were into, funk. Yes.
the Honey cover of Ohio Players?
But
They used to have all these stories about
the girl died after she was like stung by bees.
Oh, died after what?
Yeah.
She smothered to death by honey. I
Yeah.
remember those stories.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's up, Daryl?
That was a very interesting album cover and a bit racy for its time.
Indeed.
But we
That's
loved
right.
it. We loved it. So, Lori,
Yes.
where did house begin for you?
Well, I love the question, and then we always ask on the show, where does sort of the other genres stop or merge into this thing that we've learned to be house music? I would say, I think it began for me when I heard, and I'll talk about the culture, because culture are different than like the records. But I feel like when I first heard, and Craig Loftus played it for me before it was released, Frankie Knuckles' song with Jenny Principle, Your Love, and my friend Adrian, who was singing backup on that first cut. I think she sang solo, and then she sang backup, and then eventually, she's only in certain versions of it. But I remember listening to it at his house, and I was thinking, this is different. There's something uniquely Chicago about this, and I remember there being a shift in sort of how I played music then. And it was shortly after that, that we started, hearing the sounds that you created, and sounds that many others were creating the records, the actual, records that we called house music. So that I remember thinking on that moment that this is different.
All right, I want to just go back just a little bit. Let's go back to
Further.
the end of 78, beginning of 79.
Yes.
There was a certain radio station in Chicago
Disco
that kind of influenced, yes.
4.5 FM. Disco
There you
DA.
go. So when do you remember tuning in to Disco DAI?
Well, I was in high school. I don't know, Kevin, you might have been in elementary school. But,
You're too kind, Lori. I too was in high school in '78. I was was between freshman and sophomore in high school, and that
okay.
yeah, the what was interesting about what you shared was even before that station, there was the emergence of what we had called punk
Right.
to some degree, and
Yeah.
was listening to like the B-52s and Devo.
There was sort of hard punk and soft punk, and like the harder punk was like, Iron and Sex Pistols and those kind of groups that were coming in late 80s. You have to go to Exit, to hear those kind of things. And then there's kind of like more the pop punk, which is like the Pretenders and the B-52s and, the stuff that you could hear on WLS, or XRT or what have you. And I think we were somewhere in the middle of that, because we liked some of that hard stuff. It definitely influenced us, but we thought we were like Chrissy Hine and Pretenders and B-52s and
Blondie.
Kraftwerk, Blondie,
Mhm.
Blondie, great example.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There were some black ones too. Holly Styrene.
Well,
I remember her.
well, I was all rock and roll in the mid '70s into the late '70s. If it hadn't been for Wayne, I probably never would have listened to Disco DAI or anything else because that was totally classic rock.
Yeah,
growing
classic
up.
rock too. That was the
Yeah.
era for it. Yeah, we loved that.
Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin.
Oh yeah.
These were the bands that were definitely taking over the airwaves and really commanded the attention of what was known then maybe more as pop music.
Mm-hmm.
Very popular.
Brandon is saying we called it new wave. I agree. That was what I think we were
Yeah, the
calling
new
it.
wave was later. That was later though.
Really?
Yeah, that was a little later.
B-52s, Devo. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
you're
was
right.
a little later.
It came with the MTV era, actually, which was more 81-ish, 82.
Yeah, we just called
Mhm.
it all punk.
Okay, we're getting to punk. Right now we're still at disco.
Okay.
I like the way you're
That's
taking
what-
us through this slowly. Slowly. Okay, so then let me describe my exposure to disco.
There we go.
John Travolta, Saturday Night Live, first white boy I fell in love with.
The Bee
It was
Gees.
like,
You mean you're in love with someone else other than me?
no, I know.
Oh my
It
God.
was I haven't met you yet, Jesse.
All right. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, very similarly as well. The disco era. I remember actually getting this cassette tape that was one of the pre-recorded formats, and it was called A Night at Studio 54. And Alicia Bridges, Susie Lane,
Mm-hmm.
these
Oh, yeah.
artists were part of that soundtrack, which that cassette I think got so much maximum play on my realistic cassette deck.
No, you didn't.
I was hooked on disco, and plus I liked to dance when I was in high school and a little more flexible, right?
Yeah, well, that was my next question to you. Could you dance?
I did. I had a group called Gucci's Gang that maybe appeared twice at some Quigley South parties. Melissa Jennings, Derek Ashford, Mary Hackney, and I were Gucci's Gang.
Gucci's name. Okay. What about you, Lori?
I danced to my own beat. I'll just put it that way. I was not one for choreographed or organized dancing, which is why house music was so perfect for me. Because I could dance my own beat and nobody cared.
Was that akin to the fact that they say DJs can't dance?
Listen, I don't know about that rumor.
They can dance and spin.
So Kevin, when you became a DJ, all right? When you became a DJ, did you forget how to dance?
I lost a little flavor.
You lost some flavor. Okay. So we're still gonna go back just a little bit further, just a little bit, because it's around the same time.
Okay.
There was a place called Mendel. How in the world did you ever end up there?
Oh, I flunked a couple classes at Limblom, and I had to go there because I lived down the street from Mendel, and I was there for summer school, trying to make up math. Because at Limblom they didn't play; they kick you out if you didn't make up the class over the summer. You was like gone. And I discovered there was parties there at night. Like, who knew? So that's how I stumbled upon it. I didn't know any of the DJs, I don't think, back then, but I knew that this was like this thing that teenagers were doing.
What about you, Kev?
Yeah, and so this is where we are a little different, Lori, and that I had friends I grew up with that were all attending Mendel. I was the only oddball on my block in Chatham Village, and I share this in the book story that like I said earlier, I was the only one that really went to sort of a co-ed private school in the Chatham Village community, and so Tony Anderson and Warren Wilson
Mhm.
were also in my class, and they both were at Mendo. And when we got together after school, they talked about how cool it was to be a Mendo Monarch. And by the way, there was these parties being thrown on the weekends. We should all check them out.
Right.
So, my parents were a little strict in keeping me around and close to home, but eventually I convinced them to allow me to be social and attend a Mendo bi-level disco.
That's
And
cool.
Lori, how'd you get there?
Like I said, it was, I found out because I was going to school with kids, over the summer, and they're like,
I mean, the first time you actually went, though, to
oh,
a
I can't
bi-level
remember
party.
that far back,
Huh?
Jesse.
Oh, come on.
I really don't. I think maybe April took me. I mean, she had a car, Somebody drove me over there, and we were outside. I remember it very well. I remember kind of being outside more than I remember being inside, believe it or not.
Really?
It's pretty spectacular.
A lot of hanging around outside.
Okay.
It was a lot of fun.
I remember outside when I came in and when I left. I think I was inside the whole time. And my funniest experience there was that, Wayne took me there. I was this 15-year-old kid. I had no idea what's going on. And walk in, and I see the nurse from my pediatrician's office, right? And come to find out, we're related. We're like distant cousins, right? So she's like, I want you to come up and meet your cousin. And guess who my cousin was?
Wayne Williams.
Kirk Townsend.
Kirk Townsend. How many people are you related to in this group?
So that's how I ended up at Mendo.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's really interesting. So okay, I want to move forward a little bit now that we've kind of set the stage of how you all became house or pre-house or pre-house historic, as Batman says.
Okay.
So we get to
Batman.
Herb. Yeah, right. He's actually. I'll say that for another
He's
time.
related to.
That's his
No.
brother-in-law.
No. I won't claim that one. I will never claim that one.
Uh-oh.
But anyway, it's not that bad. But you know
Okay.
that. We all know that.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're gonna move a little forward, and there was a show on WXFM by a legendary DJ by the name of Herb Kent. It was called The What?
Punk out.
Look out, show.
Punk
That's
out.
right. So what was going on with you then? How did you all, what was the atmosphere like? What were you feeling? How was the music affecting you?
Well, that was a pretty cool show. I have to be honest, what stood out for me was that it was the first time I heard my name announced on the radio. And Herb Kent was, we were doing a vertigo party, or I might have been doing something else for somebody else, but he was announcing the DJs that were going to be spinning at this party. And I remember him saying my name, and I was like, I'm famous! I have been announced on the radio, my name, And so I remember feeling, pretty special when Herb Kent was, sort of propping up what we were doing as teenagers. But it was a really cool show. I mean, it was really ahead of its time, to be honest.
Okay.
Agreed. It was an avant-garde show, and I think that was part of its appeal. Certainly, there were no other shows like it on any of those stations I mentioned earlier, and Herb had more of a community feel as well. Lori just shared the fact that she and the Vertigo promoters and group were announced on his show, and I remember her being just very visible and present in the community.
Yeah. And we hung out with his daughter, Robin, of course. She was our buddy.
Of course. Oh yeah. Robin was great.
Very cool.
That's Herb Kent's daughter.
That's right.
I forget.
I told Robin she needs to have her own show because she has quite a personality, just like her
Exactly.
dad.
Exactly. That's my girl. Love me some Robin. Now you can see everybody. So we're gonna move along, and we're gonna basically figure out what was the first time you actually put a record on a turntable and called yourself a DJ.
Well, that's not hard for me. When I first time I put a record on the turntable and called myself a DJ was when I joined Vertigo, and we said I'm going to become the DJ for Vertigo, and that was Eric Bradshaw, who was our outfit's leader. Vertigo was me, Craig Loftus. This was our crew. Eric, Craig, and a gentleman named Stephen Moore. They started the group, and later on, later in that year, like I think they started in late '79, early '80s, but late '80s when I joined the group, and I joined the group as the group's DJ. So that was when I started, and I put the needle on the record. Jose Gomez was our tutor, and we were either in my basement or Craig's basement or my bedroom, and we started that way. That's how we started. We played for each other. We had little basement parties. I could tell you so many stories about those basement parties, and then we were let loose in the world. I think my first party was about.
Yeah, give us a good story in the basement.
Oh no, I would have to be. Well, we were all discovering ourselves back then, trying to figure out that kind of cool thing about being, 17, 18 in that era. I had just graduated from high school and really was just trying to figure out who I was, and as were all the people in our crew, and we were very free. We were just free. And that's the best way to describe it. Like, we didn't have money, we didn't have property, we didn't have anything except for our music. We had crates of records, and eventually we had some equipment to play it on. And we were just free. We were loving and free, and we're having a good time. So you can interpret that in lots of different ways. We had lots of good times in Craig's basement. My basement, not so much. That was really strictly for practicing music. When we wanted to have a good time, we went to Craig's house, or a few other people's houses that we hung out with. But that was the spot. Big ups to Craig. His mom was in the hospital, so we were praying for his mom. But yeah, his family was very welcoming. He and his sister, they worked the door. My buddy Kevin Pegues lived right down the street. He was our door person for the Vertical parties too. And that's where we hung out. That was our family.
What was the first Vertigo party? Where was it? And when was it?
So their first, I don't
official, not the basement ones, but the official.
No, the first Vertigo party. I wasn't part of Vertigo I was just a friend of the group, and they started. I don't know their first exact party. I think it was late 1979 or really early in 1980, because we were like seniors in high school back then, and Eric started the group. So yeah, and I think it was probably at the Loft, because they had started doing parties with Loft and transitioned to Saunders, and so my first Vertigo party was at Saunders.
Okay, so tell me that legendary story about the Loft.
Party.
That legendary story at the Loft that everybody talks about is
The Halloween party.
Yes.
Yeah, the Halloween party is where it was so crowded. We talked about this on a couple of shows ago. It was so crowded, and it becomes such a popular spot for teenagers. It was Mecca for teenagers in Chicago. Like, you had to get to the Loft. So I know that you guys were spinning there and throwing parties. Chosen Few was Vertigo's DJs. Before I became a DJ. And so there was that. David Biscay was throwing parties. Lots of different crews were throwing parties at the Loft, and we were just one of those crews. And so that Halloween party was very famous. I think it got so crowded, the walls were sweating, the floor was bouncing. That wasn't enough. They couldn't let anybody else in. I was standing outside, and there was somebody got a ladder from the fire station. Craig, way in here. Kevin, were you on the ladder? I think you know more than I do.
I was inside, standing next to the DJ booth at the time. Yeah. But there were rumors actually that those who got the ladders were actually like some sort of gang members, and they were upset that they couldn't get in. not just because of capacity, but they were being maybe, shut out intentionally. And so they got the ladder and climbed up and into the loft.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I was standing watching Alan King spin actually, and the gentleman who is now deceased, known as Rock, was also there. He was dressed as Superman.
Superman,
For that party, and the chaos was such that everyone was bewildered and didn't know whether they should try to leave and exit or stick around. And so I'm like, I gotta believe that standing next to the DJ, I'm gonna be good, right? So that's where I stood as the chaos ensued.
Yeah. And chaos was exactly what's happening. And, there before the grace of God, everybody got out safely. It didn't end in tragedy, and we were all okay.
And we didn't know the fire hazards we were breaking back in those days.
Yeah, no.
All kinds of things could have happened, but we survived. And that's a real
God
true
takes
house
care
story.
of children and fools. Yeah.
That's right. True house story.
That was one of the many memorable nights at the law.
Do you remember exactly when that was? What year?
That was 1980.
79?
It was 1980.
It was
It was right before I joined FBJ. That might have been the last chosen few party, or the last vertical party where chosen few. Oops, was the DJ. Can you guys still see me? I just did something.
Yeah, we can see you. You're good. It's still there. It's still beautiful.
Yeah, it was. Oh, you're sweet. It was Halloween. It's around October. I have a flyer. I could actually post it. And with the story next.
Yeah, there we go. That would be wonderful because there are many stories, and what I would like for you guys to do is I don't want to treat this like an interview. I would really like for you guys just to kind of speak from the heart as you did in the book, and your stories, and just relate what house music means to you as a whole. And because it's a long journey that we had. We started a long, long time ago. 4 decades ago. So, that's a good thing, though. You've made it this far. A lot of people haven't been able to make it this far.
It is a blessing, Jesse. You're absolutely right, and I certainly don't take a day for granted. Honored to be able to co-host this show 40 years later, because this thing called house has been a passion, right, for that long. And Lori, you began to allude to a notion that yes, there's the music which is central to the passion, but it also is a lifestyle, and the lifestyle is around the friendships and a little bit of the dress and attire at the time, and it was sort of our own mini Hollywood, to a degree, without as much pretentiousness, right? We did have cliques and groups of people that threw parties together, but everyone was generally supporting one another. And that part of it, I think, really drew me into it being a lifestyle. The fact that so many people from across various high schools in Chicago, you got Limblum, St. Francis, you had Kenwood, Whitney Young, St. Ignatius, Quigley. All of these schools, in today's times, I think there's a lot less sort of cross-pollination, although social media does allow for more of that. But back then, it was really special, at least it felt that way to me. And I took that feeling with me to the University of Illinois, which is where I actually first declared myself as a DJ, and put the needle to the record for a crowd. I became, what I felt at the time was a champion for promoting house music in Champaign-Urbana, as a student there. And actually, Jesse, you helped further cement that when one of my DJ crew members, Cedric Ball, recruited you to come down and play for the Kappa Carnival. I believe that was 1982, I believe. And, I was able to come into the DJ booth with you and sort of watch over your shoulder. And I said, wow, my proximity to somebody who's actually made a record, maybe some of this will rub off on me, and I'll be a record producer or record label myself.
It's funny. I've done ridiculous amounts of interviews, right? And the one question that the people seem to always, especially the ones that don't know me and haven't interviewed me before or anything, they'll ask me like, "God, you're a nice guy." I look at them like, well, what do you expect me to be? And it's funny because they say that like somebody such as myself that's made records and done all these things and wonderful, I'm supposed to be an a-hole, or I'm supposed to be stuck up and this and that. And I'm thinking like, well, why is that the norm? And then I have to pause and think about a lot of people I know, and a lot of them are assholes. So, but at the end of the day, that shouldn't be the norm. For me, it's like my thing has always been, I'm still that kid in his grandmother's basement trying to figure out how I got here. It's like, yeah, I did something that I can acknowledge at this point that sparked a movement that's grown into what we know today as house music, but it just seems so minute in the scope of things. You know what I mean? To me.
Yeah.
To me. To other people it's obviously means something, but to me it just seems like it's, okay, I lit a match. So what now? And what I strive to do in my life and my career is just continue to do and progress the genre and things that are associated with as well. I don't, just like with this in their own words book that we're doing that you guys are featured in, my whole objective with that was to provide a new perspective of the whole thing, because we've seen the same old perspective a zillion times in documentaries and other interviews, stories, features, you name it. And enough is enough. Let's talk about something different. Let's get a perspective from the people who actually lived it. And one of my things that's really important to me with this is giving the person who, I don't want to say they're nobody because they're not a nobody, they're actually somebody, but I mean in the scope of who's considered to be a pioneer or someone who's pushed the genre forward. What about the people who just came to the party? What about the people who came to dance? What about just like all of us, the first time we went, we just came to dance. We came to be a part of something. Click, Kevin had his group. Lori did her own thing, but she still came to be a part of the whole thing, just like the rest of us. So that was my objective with this whole thing, and I really am very appreciative of everyone that shared their stories, because for me, reading through the book, after I finally 4 years of all trying to put it together, figure out what it was going to be, but actually reading it that very last time, most of the stories have just brought me to tears. And it's so amazing the effect that this has had on people worldwide. But again, this is your interview. I wanted to add that. And I want you to talk about what it means to you. So continue.
Well, I am curious though, Jesse. You have the I can't wait to get the book. I should download it today, right?
Tomorrow.
Was it tomorrow? Of course. Tomorrow. I will have it tomorrow, and I'm getting hard copies. I didn't know they were available. So I can give them out as Christmas presents. But I think there would be. I'm happy to tell you more of the story without giving away everything that's in the book. But I like what Kevin was saying about there was a culture, but not a culture. How did you describe it, Kevin?
Sort of a lifestyle.
Lifestyle. That it really was sort of intoxicating for a lot of people. That it was something that, this is a new family that you just discovered. And even to this day, the people that we've met throughout the years, whether that's me as a party goer or me as a DJ or as a promoter or, just somebody who loves the music, it's an instant connection. The same folks that I met or years ago, when I started doing this. I see them now, and it's like no time has passed because it's like people who've been in war together. Like the '80s were a pretty bumpy period. We were kids and we were partying and we were coming up in this time that was also when we discovered HIV and AIDS, which wiped out like so many contributors to house music, to disco, um, which had Reagan as our president. There was a ton of issues which had a lot going on in Chicago. I mean, talk about the police brutality. The '80s was horrible. The beginning of the crack epidemic. Heroin in Chicago and the West Side. So there was a lot of really traumatic things that were happening. And I almost think that coming of age during that period, while all of that was going on, might have helped fuel that family, fuel that outlet, that place where you needed to go and be connected to something that was all about love and all about positivity and all about sort of building something, building this new nation. And I almost feel like, we talk about house nation. I really do think there was a new nation that was started. Elements of it in other cities, but Chicago was, where we were.
Well, I think, one second, Kevin, I was going to say that Chicago is very unique to that. New York, of course, had its own culture and similar to us, especially with the disco and then into hip hop and so on and so forth, and even house later on. But we don't want to give New York more credit than they deserve. It's a Chicago thing. But what I see when I go places and I talk to people my age, the thing I find out from them is that they grew up kind of like everybody else grew up with basic, whatever the popular music was of the day and so on and so forth. We had a special culture that I don't think anybody really experienced the way we did.
I would agree.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I lived in Boston right after college, and there was definitely a cross section of people from across the country. And when you tell them that you're still in touch with someone that you knew in high school or even earlier, from grade school or on your block, they're like, wow, I lost,
it's unusual, right?
yeah, I lost track of those
Yeah.
friends that I grew up with, after high school or whatever. So
My wife doesn't have any friends from that era, like none. Like
Mhm.
I'm like, who were you hanging out with when you was like 19 and 20? She's like, I had sorority sisters, what have you, and people I went to college with, and that just doesn't. And so it's unusual. Like people need to know that these relationships that were formed, during that time frame that have endured over the years, or you go away and you come back together, and that's unusual. Most people don't have that kind of thickness, in those kinds of relationships that you form when you're like 18, 19, 20 years old.
and house as the music and the lifestyle really almost serves as some glue, right? It's an eclectic glue of everyone that we're talking about and we see still, and we're going to miss in a few weeks coming together at least in person as the Chosen Few picnic is that formal reunion.
Yeah. But what I also think pretty cool about it, Jesse, is while it started then, it has continued to evolve. So, people like yourself who continue to produce and create, and Kevin, and so the different iterations of it, and like all of us, you may step away from this element or that element, but you always sort of come back. It's the gravity, it's our center, and people come back to it over and over and over again. And I think I just appreciate, Kevin just mentioned the Chosen Few picnic, or the you don't call it a picnic anymore, we call it a
Festival. Music festival.
right? Music festival. It really did a lot for the community to kind of keep house music relevant, but not only keep it relevant, because I almost feel like it was sort of esoteric, that there was this group of Black people who while we were exposed to what's going on at 50-yard line and doo-wop and the loop, and we were skating to Leonard Roy at the rink, and we kind of knew that stuff there. We have this other thing, this other culture that we were developing, and that was not the majority of black teenagers. That was a very little slim little group of high schoolers, that was a portion of like the black community who's into music. And now that's very different. Now you don't see that. I mean, people that I knew were not into that when I was in high school and in college are now into that. And I think that is about how we created a platform for this to evolve and to continue to bring on people over the years in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, and beyond, to be exposed to something that's new. I still have people who are older who are saying now, I'm into house music now. I'm like, cool, better late than never, right? And I'm not mad at DJs who want to start at 50. I'm talking to Leonard about that. Better late than never. Go ahead, do your thing.
But
It's never too late.
it's an important point, because I think it was seeping into the psyche of others, right? And particularly when they saw the elation and sort of all of the aspects of that lifestyle we talked about earlier. And then it also helped what was happening on FM radio beyond Disco DAI, the movement from Disco DAI of that continuous mix format, the hot mix, right, to WBMX. And I'll never forget what I saw as a pivotal point in sort of drawing more people in and affecting that gravity effect that you described, Lori, was the what we now know today, some bastardization of it as Taste of Chicago. It used to be called Chicago Fest.
Chicago Fest, that's right, Jane Byrne.
Yeah, and at Navy Pier, before Navy Pier was renovated,
Right.
there was this party that BMX was responsible for promoting and producing, and that party was so massive. And they had hot mixers there. I can't remember if it was specifically the Hot Mix 5 or not DJing at that party, but it was so massive, and the music played was dance music, and a lot of people were affected by that. They were influenced by that event. It was a peaceful event. It was tens of thousands of people at Navy Pier, and I'll attribute that as one of the tipping points from my perspective of how house music really gained some additional momentum.
Yep.
So then, as we move into what we call Chicago house music, after the punk out era, people like myself started making some tracks, right? So what was that experience like to hear homegrown people you knew, people you partied with, people, the other DJs that you knew started to make these records that were being played everywhere, and they were being sold in record stores and ending up on the charts in other countries and things like that? What was that feeling like?
It was very cool. And I remember when your track came out and with you and Vince, and we're like, do you have it? We got a record? Oh, wow. There's a record, from Chicago DJ. And I remember Chip E, came out with something. We were he was at a roller skating rink doing a party there, and I'm like, little Chip E's got a record out. Okay, because you think of people, from the party scene, and it's like it's a DJ or it's just a young kid, and he just, boy, he was smiling ear to ear, and you could just see the pride. And I think it was a source of pride for everybody, for the promoters and the DJs, and just to see everyone sort of ascend to this new level, like they're creating the music now. And I, that was I was doing a little bit of spinning right at the beginning of that, and then I put the music away while I was finishing college. You know, the late '80s, I didn't DJ at all because I was just crazy trying to finish school, and I was trying to do production. And I just became appreciative of it. I'm just like, you know, I was like out there singing our praises. I was going to the parties, I was hearing it. It's good stuff.
What was that like, having been a DJ, going through this, listening to this new sound come, and not DJing? So now your perspective is as a person going to a party and listening as opposed, and maybe you still had the DJ head on and you're still thinking, you know,
Of
what
course
would I
you
play
did.
or
I'm
how would I
like,
play?
yeah, I remember thinking, here was my original thought, honestly, when I would go and I'd hear the records at Club Arrays and other places that was not actively DJing. And I was always listening to, you know, like how the music was, you know, everything from phrasing to the transitions to, you know, like the style of the DJ, to the way people were responding to it. And there was a shift. There was a definite shift in like the crowd and the energy. And I also think that's where house music kind of got bifurcated. So you know, when you have people who came from our sector, if you will, who are like DJs who let the song play, you know, and it's about creating a storyline. It's about taking people sort of on a journey. And then there were other DJs who were like, you know, in and out. You get it, it's, you know, it's hot mixing, you know. And I really remember back then thinking, we are evolving. Like this thing that used to be just one thing is now like different crowds, different parts of the town, different age groups. You know, people who went to the playground were not always the same people who went to the music box. You know, so there was a lot, there was some variation that was happening that I would distinctly remember, like in the sort of the you know, 86, 87. I left Chicago in '88 and I moved to New York for a few years, and that was a whole different experience. But I remember seeing that changeover, like around '86, '87. It's kind of splintering of the people who are into house music. Sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I think I have some similar thoughts about what I observed. I probably came through a slightly different journey in that at University of Illinois at Urbana, when I declared myself a DJ, I did some time on radio there. And it was a fairly competitive environment from a DJ perspective for a short period of time. And so my strategy became to amass all of the best DJs into my crew. So we were known as BMG Productions, or the Better Music Group. And like I said, Cedric Ball was a key player and a co-founder of that. Brad Ritchie, Jerry Jammin McAllister. These were some of the DJs that we brought together, and we ultimately were looking to create a monopoly and to lock all the parties on campus. Okay. And so our strategy became throwing our own parties. And so we had this duplex apartment that on the weekends we converted into a disco. Cedric had a mirror ball. We had, it was Studio 54 in Champaign, Urbana. And so that feeling that resulted in being able to promote parties, which then made demand for our DJ crew, you know, peak, right? Everybody had to secure BMG because they wanted to create a similar experience as the parties that we were producing for ourselves. And in addition to bringing Jesse down to Champaign, we brought James Silk, Steve Hurley, and Keith Nunley, and their dancers to perform a couple of years. And that takeaway was that we're not just DJs and producing, you know, being DJs for hire. We're also now producing events, and we're part of the music industry. We had radio on lock in terms of mixes. We were producing mini concerts, track act concerts, and then we were DJing parties. That business sense then translated for us as an opportunity to, carve out other facets and involvement of the music business. And so I too went to the East Coast, and I gotta believe, Lori, we also, in addition to crossing paths in Chicago, when you were in New York, I was in Boston, and helped really foster some of the house movement on the East Coast in Boston. In fact, Tyrone Mix and I worked for the same computer company. And I was reading his.
Oh, really?
And we had Tyrone come and do some of the corporate parties when I was in Boston, and we had some. It was an interesting time because hip hop dominated the East Coast, and club music was certainly there and thriving. In every corner from Jersey to New York City. But, it was an interesting time to be in the music business. Attended what was an early South by Southwest, which was music related then before interactive, New Music Seminar, Jack the Rapper in Atlanta. All of these conferences then gave further support to, hey, how can we make a business run at what's been created here? And so similarly, I had these aspirations as well. And knowing people like you, Lori, and Jesse, and Keith, and Steve, and Chippy, and others really gave way to that because you guys were trailblazers.
So you decided to become the publicist for house music, Kevin, and you serviced a lot of people and provided some great newsworthy stuff to the press as a publicist for them as well. And what made you want to go into that?
Well, you're gonna love this story because I was actually pissed off. You guys were creating viable music that was both underground, commercial, all of that. But I was seeing, against other artists be sort of praised and reviewed in all of the trade magazines more so than people from Chicago. And you guys, I befriended a lot of you creators, the pioneers of house, are my friends. And so I was pissed off because you guys weren't getting the recognition and credit that I thought you deserved. And so I'd read, not from cover to cover, but there was this famous book called This Business of Music. And reading parts of the book, I read about what the importance of public relations was. And I put together the fact that this was a gap in the house music business community. There were no publicists. There were no one out there championing the personas and stories of the people from Chicago creating this great music that I certainly love, and I saw that there was an appreciation for. And so I said, I'm going to step into this gap, and I'm going to represent the Chicago house music community and ensure that their narratives were reaching the same audiences that were reading Billboard magazine, that were reading Dance Music Report, that were, Street Sound, DMC, all of the publications. And we did a show talking about house media earlier this year, and it's important. It was very important to, as Laura, you were describing, evolving the genre. So that's why I became a publicist.
Right? Is there anything? Let's take. I hate to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Let's take what you think is the best piece of music, a release, an artist that you think you did the best job on, and why? What happened that one became your biggest piece today?
Man, you put me on.
Yes, I am.
On a challenging position because as you said, I did represent a lot of great house music contributors. But one of the things that I was most proud of, I will say, it was sort of a collaborative project. It was a conglomeration of what at times I call camps, right? Everybody, they were cliques, but we went to make a presence in New York at the New Music Seminar. We wanted to really make some noise because the licensing and distribution of what became an independent label movement, right? So people were certainly creating records, and then they also started creating their own record labels. And we did what I believe to be this phenomenal hospitality suite during one of the New Music Seminars. It might have been 94, 95. And among the collaborators were the Mirage Entertainment crew, Rick Lenore, Larry Thompson, Gary Wallace, George, and Hula and Fingers. They had Clubhouse, Cashmere, Large Records, and DJ Lil Jon. All of these groups came together and produced this incredible hospitality suite under my PR efforts. And we actually did, in a hotel room, some live performances. I remember Dajay performing Brighter Days, and Pete, the song that DJ Lil Jon did with a guy named Pete. Ulysses was his stage name. It was called, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting? Someone online help me out. This is a sign of the stressful week that it's been. But we came together, we got distributors into the suite, and we got licensing deals for the labels. And that was one of the greatest feats. But I've represented 10 City, JM Silk, Keith Nunley's solo career, Hula and Fingers. I was also very mad when they had produced Summertime for Jazzy Jeff and Wilson. And at the Grammy speech, there was no plug for the producers.
That happens. You get up there, man, you get in front of that crowd, and you forget everything you wanted to say. You know?
That's why you're supposed to write it down.
Yeah.
Right, well, you're so overwhelmed in the moment. I mean, Lori, how'd you feel when I gave you that special award for being a pioneer?
That was the most special award ever. I think I appreciate it. I really appreciate you recognizing, whatever little contributions I've made. And, and I mean, Jesse, look, we were kids having fun, and you never know that something you're doing is going to create some kind of ripple for somebody else or influence. And if I was able to do that just by being myself and doing what I wanted to do and trying to be authentic about it, I'm really happy to have that effect. I was not having the best life. That was the best part of my life, but I was kicked out of my house. I was living on couches. those were hard years. I was coming out, and that it wasn't an easy time for me. So that came out of it. Like I know my parents look at it and they see a lot of the interest in sort of the early days of house music and sort of the precursors to that, where I get asked to do stuff thanks to you, Jesse, with the BBC and others. And they're like, oh my God, we didn't sort of understand like how meaningful that was to you at the time. I was like, well, you wouldn't have because you kicked me out. But that was the best part of my life, and I'm glad that it meant something to people, and that it helped to do some part of this movement. And I appreciate it. I greatly appreciate getting the award. I will say this: what does it feel like? It always makes me feel like your work is not done. When I get an award, it's like, okay, it's like, and now what? Like if there's
That's
something
like first
about
base.
it.
Right.
Yeah, something about it that always feels like, okay, and now what? Like, are you done now that you got an award? No, it kind of motivates you to be like, okay, how do I get to the next phase of whatever that is? And there's always a chance that we can go deeper, that we can love harder, that we can promote better, that we can bring people out of the shadows, that we can entertain more, that we can produce more, that we can be less consumers and more creators. So that's what it means to me, Jesse.
Good. Well, that's not very concise,
right.
but it's a great explanation. No, actually, I know there's so much more.
But what
from my
am I
perspective,
missing?
no, I'm just saying in terms of your career and your life. But from my perspective, here's a person that has been there pretty much since the beginning, and I never felt really got her just due. So for me, you are a prime candidate for that award.
Thank you. I do appreciate it.
Can we also include the fact that despite this having historically been a male-dominated genre,
That's right.
he punched through the top and trailblazed broke the glass ceiling, if you will, and blazed the trail for DJs that are female. But DJ, you are.
But
I appreciate it.
I mean, we see Lori. Of course, she's female. She's a woman. We know this, but I see you, Lori, as a music just connoisseur. Icon in the world of, because think about what he just said. It's a male-dominated industry, and here we have someone that it didn't matter what you wanted to do, who you wanted to be with, who you wanted to hang out with, whether you wanted to spend, whether you didn't want to do, you did it your way, and you made things happen for Lori Branch, and that's what we love about you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Wow. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me, Jesse and Kelly.
And I guys a little bit as well, because I get to co-host
with her.
Get out of here. All right, you guys can stop.
No, we all are privileged and we're not worthy, so.
Right? But here's a little secret. Lori revealed when we did, I think Lori and I sat down for a special holiday edition of Vintage House, and she talked about really the aspiration of being this music journalist sort of person, the interviewer. I think there's a little Robin Roberts in you there.
Uh-oh. I like it. I have to tell you, I do think it's a little preordained. What I didn't mention in the book, and maybe I mentioned it to you, Jesse, and I have this little piece of tape, because my parents were prolific, recorders of everything. But it's mostly all video. And so I was like 8 years old. I was talking about what I got for Christmas. And they're like, what did you get for Christmas? I'm talking to the camera. I was like, I got a typewriter and a record player. And is that what you wanted? Yes. And I think it's like coming full circle, that there's something about, because I do love writing. I love human beings, and I love people, and I love getting to know folks. Jesse, you and I probably had the longest conversation of our life a couple of years ago when we were just sitting there talking, and that's, just about our lives. And that, I mean, I felt so full from that just for like the whole weekend. It's just like just having a heart connection with somebody, who I've known for so long. And through the show, I feel like we've been able to do a lot more of that. So I love it. I do love those two worlds.
Right. It's an amazing world, and as I said before, we are privileged to have grown up in that era and that time, and be at the beginning of something that's pretty much taken over the world, which is why the whole book, in their own words, which you guys are featured in, is so special to me. And I'm sure I'm getting stories back from people already who've gotten their copies and are telling me this is just amazing. And
Somebody right there has a copy.
right there it is, in their own words. But the thing for me is, it's more of it's an expose. One of my favorite things, contrary to popular belief, because most people, especially my brother Wayne, thinks that I'm the most self-centered person in the world, and I don't give credit to anybody else, and so on and so forth. And that's totally not true. That's why I keep telling. It's like, you've known me my whole life, but you really don't know me. So my thing with this was to highlight, as I said in the beginning, I want to highlight everyone, every person that this music has touched, no matter where you are, who you are, what race you are. Yes, it started with us in the black community, but this is a worldwide phenomenon.
Absolutely.
And it's touched every hemisphere and every person in this world, and they love it. Which brings me to my last question to you guys. With the current state of events that are going on, what do you think, or how do you feel house music can really get us through?
It's a healer. It's a healer. And it is. And these stories are important. I see you out there, Mark, Lennis, Wendell, pick up the book so you can know what we're talking about, everybody else. But I think it is a healer. You cannot be upset, when you are listening to some good house music. I mean, that's why this community is what it is. And I appreciate that people are doing these live sets, and I've enjoyed doing them too. Hearing you on the radio. I mean, the more that we can sort of bring people together through music, the more peace we're going to have. I know that sounds very kumbaya-ish, but I think it's true. It's like our church,
Yes. Kevin, you add anything?
I think Lori really encapsulated it well. If I could add anything to it, I would say that we, in the house music community, I think really go a long way to appreciating one another's humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And humanity, I think, is or the lack of acknowledgement of another human being, of the same species has brought us to the point that we are today. And if we don't get that right, it's going to continue to be a problem. But I will go a long way in really saying that house music, and I'll go ahead and say this, it is a feeling, but it's also about the humanity of those who love and appreciate it.
Yes.
And so through that love and appreciation, we are, really able to embrace those that gravitate to the genre and the lifestyle. And so hopefully, if we could spread house and create, peace and understanding of one another, that would be my wish, right? And making the world a better place.
I think that's happening, and as I said, reading these stories, as we go through, especially as you get towards the end, there's a chapter called The Movement, and that's basically where I discovered that although I'd been to Detroit and I'd been to New York and a couple of other places, I discovered that this music had gotten a lot further than I could have ever imagined. I picked up a billboard one day and saw Dum Dum. Remember that track? The Dum Dum track? The real level? I saw it on the charts in the UK. And I'm thinking to myself, how in the world would this record ever get to the UK? And as I've gone through my career and the years have gone by, being in the most remote places of the world with people I had no inclination whatsoever that they would even know what house music was, are coming up to me asking me to autograph a record or telling me about something I did. And I'm sitting there looking at them like, how old are you? I mean, these are young kids. You know, everyone thinks that the kids are in, into the style that we're talking about. They're more into the EDM, the big festival things like. A lot of them. Well, one thing I can say that I've learned throughout the years is there's a cycle. Just like, coming of age, going to clubs, you gradually start going to lounges, so on and so forth. Well, for them, it's a hard, just like we were in a new wave, we wanted the harder stuff, the crazy stuff. But as they get older and they mature, they gravitate towards house music. And that stays with them for the rest of their life.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. One of the things you reminded me of, though, going back to your previous question about one of the biggest other instances of publicity, I wasn't necessarily on the PR team, but I facilitated a chosen few DJ story in Ebony magazine. And I don't know if you were there for that shoot. Photo shoot, you were certainly covered in it, but a friend of mine who was there at the time, the writer Margina Christian, got you guys in Ebony magazine with a nice spread, and of course, Ebony was it, the epitome of media, certainly in the African American community. Full disclosure, I later worked there myself, but help facilitate the nice spread that you guys got back in maybe 2012, somewhere around there.
Okay. You're still doing it. Still making it happen.
Somewhere along.
Can't stop.
Well, media's changed, right? It's contracted.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Much smaller, and people are creating their own programs. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, you guys, this has been wonderful. It's a bit after 8 o'clock, about 12 minutes or so.
This Pacific time.
I mean, well, 8 o'clock from me. I'm Pacific people, and my life works on Pacific time.
That's right.
That's what Lauren tells me. Oh, we're gonna start at 9. Or no, excuse me, 8:45. I'm thinking 8:45, and then I have to really get in my head.
Do the math.
Yeah, but
I do that all day. My company is in San Francisco, so I'm always on 2 hours behind us. Yes, I get it. Well, Jesse, congratulations on the book. I think it's amazing already. I'm so proud and so appreciative of what you're doing. And I don't care what Wayne says. Jesse cares about this community and everybody in it. So get the book.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. I just love you. I appreciate you so much.
I love you too.
And
Kevin, I appreciate you.
I'm grateful for being, included, and the story is one that I'm, proud of. But as it fits into the puzzle, right, that so many people have contributed to, and so I encourage everyone as well. Get the digital version tomorrow. You could order the paperback edition right now, and you've got sort of this innovative virtual book tour going on in conjunction with the Vintage House Show, correct?
Well, yes. I mean, what Lauren and I discussed was doing something that could perpetuate this whole thing of keeping it going. Because the book in itself is kind of a final piece, right? If you're one of the 83 stories, you made it in. But what about the other?
I was going to ask, what was the number?
Yes, 83 unique stories in there. I had probably 300 stories submitted, and
You made the cut, Kevin.
you made the cut. But the hardest part about it was making this follow some sort of storyline. Okay, because when I initially started this, I just wanted to have people's stories. I just wanted to put them together and let everybody read everybody's story. Then I thought about it. I said, well, this it's a book. It has to have some kind of semblance of a timeline, a structure, chapters, and so on and so forth. So as it started coming together and I came up with chapter headings, I started sorting the stories into those and see where they would fit, which story would pick up where another left off, or maybe explain a little bit more what that person was starting but didn't quite finish, or just give a different perspective of it. So that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was understanding and learning that people write like they speak.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that one for a second.
Yeah,
So
I know.
a lot of likes and a lot of LOLs and a lot of this and that, and it's sorting through all that to really kind of make things a bit more concise and to the point, because at the end of the day, you're still trying to appease a reader or make it interesting for the reader, you know? And so I have to put on my, I'm not a writer, y'all. I don't care what anybody says. I never set out to be a writer. Just like I never even set out to be a producer or any of this stuff.
But you're doing both. Very
good. But it just kind of fell in my path. But, I've learned so much, and I think about the people who've gone to school and studied English and journalism and everything. I'm just like, I so didn't do any of that, And one thing I can say is that I do remember in elementary school, my teacher told my mother that I had a gift for creative writing. Mm-hmm. So maybe that stuck with me and I picked it up somewhere along the line. But I really, this has been an ordeal, a 4-year ordeal. And I am so glad it's over. You just don't know. But having said that, I want to pick up where I left off. The stories that didn't make it into the book, and anyone who still has a story they want to tell, I am going to start a page on my website where you can contribute and we can keep this going and make it more of a living book so everyone can share their stories.
Nice. That's important.
Yeah.
Because people and their narratives, you want to, in some instances, people want to leave something behind, and that will be a wonderful opportunity for them to do.
Yes, I think it is. And originally, I was almost going to try to publish this as just an online thing. I had ideas to try to keep it that way, and then at the end of the day, I said, this has to be something that, because, I get a lot of scholars and professors and whatnot, people that are contacting me all the time trying to verify this piece of information. We got this story, but how did this end up? Or, things like that. So I felt it was necessary to really put a piece of literature out there that they can actually gravitate towards and research with.
That's good. Good job.
Well, thank you guys. This has been interesting because I'm always watching you guys interviewing everybody, and you do a great job of it. So it's nice to turn the tables on you and finally get you all stories.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Jesse.
Of course.
It is wonderful. And again, this is further advancement of the culture, and we're much appreciated.
Yeah. And beginning tomorrow, and I'm going to do Central Time this time, at 8 p.m. Central, we will be doing In Their Own Words Live. And that will be the kickoff of a daily event that will happen at 8 p.m. every day. And we will start with the stories of the book, and as we progress, we will start interviewing people that don't have stories in the book but still have a story to tell. So this will be an ongoing thing, and I hope everyone appreciates and will tune in and go out and buy the book, In Their Own Words, at Amazon. Thank you guys once again.
All right.
Next week, Kevin?
What we got next week?
I'm calling out Braxton Holmes. I don't know if he's watching, but he said he would come on because there's a whole little conversation we're having about the 90s kids, and he's one of them. So,
get Braxton. Please get Braxton.
And he said he'd come on.
Right.
So we're going to bring him on. I'll see if he's available next week because we haven't pinned down our guests.
Yeah.
But thanks again, Jesse. We'll see you tomorrow. No, I won't see you. I'll be watching you tomorrow.
8 p.m.
Oh my God. I'm going to be watched by Lori?
Okay.
I mean, seriously, I'm used to watching you. I'm not used to being watched.
We'll be watching you, babe.
All right.
All right,
Tune
y'all.
in.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. I might do a live, not tonight, but next week for sure.
All right, we're so used to seeing you do your live. I think
I'm not doing it.
Little John and I were talking about that. It was like all the DJs going live. It's like Lori Branch is out there doing her thing.
It's a lot of fun. It's a
Yeah.
lot of fun. I love doing it.
Good set.
All right, guys.
Good
Talk to you
job.
later.
Hey, Jesse,
Okay,
tell people
take
where
care.
you can get the book again.
Everybody.
Be well.
Jesse, give people tell them again where they can get the book. People are
Oh
asking.
yeah, one more thing.
One more time, in their own words, is the book. It's available at Amazon. You can get it in
Amazon.
digital. Digital tomorrow will be available as of the 4th. It's the official release date. June 4th. Mark it. This has been a terrible year, but hopefully this is a bright spot in the year for us all. You know,
Get the book.
in 2020.
Hey,
it's available on Amazon.
103, Lori Branch. The Lori,
Get out of here. You've heard the story already.
I'm sorry, page 101.
I do tell some secrets.
Yeah, you got some good stuff in there now.
Your main man Mega is on page 91.
That's where the magic. Bye, y'all. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Peace.
Good evening to you. These guys are all big influences on me and certainly house music.
Happy.
No, that does not sound like
Yeah, walk
most.
around with that collar popped up.
Yeah.
Hey, do this.
Yeah.
You go
So-
over there.
Yeah.
So let's go on that. I want to talk a little bit about each of your illustrious careers, because you guys have done a lot. All three of you have done amazing, have had amazing contributions to what we call house music. This is the Vintage House Show. And so part of what that is about is celebration and preservation. This is Lawrence framing, but the celebration and preservation of Chicago house legends and Chicago house music. And I think